This is Gene Monterastelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 290, originally aired October 25th, 2017. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Today, my conversation is with Dr. Peta Stapleton, and we're going to talk about her continuing work where they are testing EFT in the laboratory and some really cool things that they are doing since our last conversation. But before we jump into that, just a reminder, I have a free 10-part guide that you can use to use EFT to help eliminate self-sabotage in your life. All you need to do is go to tappingqa.com and click on the big blue button. Or if you go into the show notes, there is a link there. Or if you're listening to this in the website right now, on that right-hand side, go to the top of the right-hand column. There's a big blue button right there. Click on it. It's absolutely free. Every few days, you'll receive an audio or a video or a tapping script or an article with some instructions that will show you really simple ways, little by little, that you can use EFT so you can start taking the actions that you want. As you're doing that, if you have questions about it, please let me know. Gene, Gene, at tappingqa.com. Now, as I'm recording this intro, I just realized right now, there's a possibility that you're hearing some tapping in the background. That's because it's a rainy day here in New York City, and some really cool things are coming to the podcast. So you won't have to deal with background noise ever again starting next week, but we'll talk about that then. So the conversation today with Peta is, I think it's an important conversation, even though I know you're probably not a scientist, you are not doing these sorts of studies. Even if you're not a practitioner, I think it's good that we all understand the science behind EFT. That, to be honest, there is just a lot of woo-woo crap out there where people are explaining how and why tapping works with no other basis than the person who taught them told them that, and you have no idea if it's true. When we're able to point to good hard science and really good research, then it makes us more credible when we're sharing EFT with someone else. And ultimately, I know that when you're sharing EFT, it's because you really care about the person across from you. And the more effective you are communicating how powerful EFT is in terms that they understand, the much more likely they're going to use it. And they're going to become the same sort of ambassador for EFT that you already are. So that's the reason why I think a conversation like this is so important. Peta and I had a conversation about 6 months ago about the stuff that she's been doing over the course of the last decade. And in the middle of that conversation, she mentioned what was upcoming. So I check in with her in this conversation now that they have access to an fMRI and they actually can do brain scans before and after someone's gone through a bunch of tapping and what we can learn from that. So here is my conversation with Peta Stapleton. So since the last time we chatted, I know that you guys have finished up all of the weight loss stuff and you're submitting papers and all of that process is going on. Now that you have some space, what are you guys going after next?
Yeah, it's really exciting. So we definitely want to extend that weight trial where we scanned our, subjects' brains, which we talked about last time.
Yep.
So we're going to extend that into next year, but we're going to add an extra dimension to that. So I've met with one of the pioneers in the space of telomeres. So our listeners might know a bit about telomeres. They've kind of been in the meditation sort of literature. And they're the ends of your DNA strands, which are indicators of aging. So we know that your telomeres shorten, over your life, and stress and poor diet, lack of exercise will shorten your DNA strands, those telomeres. But you can test how long they are, which is exciting because the research is showing that length of telomere is also associated with the onset of dementia. So the shorter your length of your telomere, the more likely you could know in the future if you're going to get dementia. So we want to test whether like meditation, EFT can lengthen or grow your telomere, because we do know that they're responsive like that, so they will. So we're going to add that to our fMRI brain studies next year for the weight people, but also for our chronic pain population. So we're going to actually do some research in that space.
Okay, so I know nothing about this,
Sure.
so I'm going to ask you some questions coming from an absolute novice on this. So what it sounds like you're saying is that it's not that the telomeres are reporting back, but instead the longer or shorter they are actually have a direct dictation on what our health is like and how long we are alive. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so they're definitely that biological marker of aging. So not your chronological age, but like you're saying, your body's age with what we've been through. Yeah, so, but they're responsive, so they can actually be lengthened, which obviously will then protect you against other aging diseases down the track. So it's a fairly new, when we say new, we mean the last, 10 to 15 years, but new area. But it's exciting because I think we're going to see a lot happening in this space.
And so as you approach something like that, like I know how to tap on a pain in my knee. I say, there's this pain in my knee, and I tap. How do you create a protocol where you can tap for something like that that's happening in a biological way, that's happening on a microscopic level?
So we will, so you can test your telomeres through blood tests. So obviously, patients will have to be okay with that element. But what we'll be looking for is obviously, say, our food overweight population that we use tapping for food cravings, weight loss. We'll do our normal protocol there, but we'll test them and follow them up to a year later to see whether the impact of changing, obviously, a food craving and the style of their eating will actually have an impact biologically on the telomere length. And our other population,
gotcha.
like our chronic pain, we'll do our normal protocol for chronic pain, but see whether that has the impact, like some of the other research that's coming out of EFT showing, the upregulation and downregulation of certain DNA genes through tapping or as a result of. So it'll be that kind of level of impact.
Gotcha. So you're just measuring to see if this is one more consequence. You're not tapping specifically to have that happen.
No, that's right. So it'll just be a consequence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the research that has been showing up, what have been some of the other things that have already been successful in creating lengthening of the telomeres? Yeah,
so some of the recent studies that have come out have looked at things like mindfulness practices. So they've done specific populations like breast cancer patients, obviously a group of women who went through an 8-week mindfulness program whilst they were going through chemotherapy. And then they had a control group where they obviously went through their treatment but didn't have any mindfulness program. And the telomere length, because something like a chemotherapy radiation process will impact your telomere length. So obviously it's a stress on the body.
Yep.
But the women who go through mindfulness-based programs while they go through treatment, their telomere length is preserved, so it doesn't erode at all, whereas the control group show that there's actually still shortened through that treatment process. So they're looking at things like that. Meditation, transcendental meditation, has actually been looked at in groups of people, and telomere length, again, tested through bloods and things like that. So they're showing that they preserve the length and even increase the length up to, 10 to 20%. Yeah, so it's exciting. So you can see that anything that calms the body down, especially at that, sympathetic nervous system level, is having an impact.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So the last time we talked, you had just been or were in the process of getting access to the fMRI. Are you actually getting a chance to dive in and use it now? And if so, how are you using it and what are you hoping to learn?
Yeah, so we finished our pilot study and that should be out in the next couple of months. So that's under publication at the moment. So people will be able to read what we did. And we did that with our overweight, obese adults who were targeting food cravings. So we got them to look at those photos while they were in there, see which parts of the brain activate. And what we're going to do moving forward is where our local health department here in Queensland, our state, are very supportive of EFT in their chronic pain program. So we're actually going to now run a protocol next year with our fMRI and scan the brains of chronic pain patients, so patients that have definitely had chronic pain for over 12 months or longer, and do EFT to see if we can impact parts of the brain. Because obviously chronic pain is such a significant, we have 1 in 5 adults here in Australia that suffer chronic pain. and see whether that can actually impact not only their lives, but how it's impacting in the brain at that EFT level. So that's where we're going next year.
And so I don't have any experience with chronic pain. I understand what it's like to reduce pain. When you're doing this sort of work in tapping, are you hoping to see a change in the brain that reflects that the pain isn't going to continue into the future? Or, I mean, I don't know exactly what you're hoping to notice inside of the brain if something like this is successful. Like, what's the consequence at a neurological level?
Yeah, so the protocol we're developing at the moment is based around the premise that once an acute pain, say an injury, is beyond the point of natural healing, as in there shouldn't be any pain perceived by that patient. That's the population we're dealing with here. The research and literature suggests that mostly the chronic pain at that level will be driven by psychological processes. So what we're going to do is do one population only, and at the moment we're kind of thinking it'll be motor vehicle injuries. So just people that have been through a motor vehicle injury. And we want to know, I guess, and here's what we're hypothesizing, is that when they're in that machine, and we are going to have everyone's individual story of their injury, and we will read it to them when they're in the fMRI machine. And we want to see what parts of their brain activate when they're listening to their own story that they obviously have a connection to. We suspect it'll probably be the emotional areas of the brain that light up, so the limbic areas. And like what we found with the food craving studies, they will then obviously come out of the machine, go through an EFT program, so it could be 4 to 8 weeks. So they'll go off and do that outside, and then they'll come back, be scanned again, and again we'll read the same story, which is their personal experience, to see whether we get a deactivation in the emotional areas, because what will correspond is the physical pain should correspond with that lack of pain. Yeah, deactivation. That's right.
Gotcha. And so then in that 4 to 8 week protocol that you're going to create, are you going to be doing the movie technique on that story? Is it just going to be around the physical symptoms? Like, how do you, because each person's story is so unique and each person's type of pain is so unique, what are you going to create? Because I know that this isn't just about relief, but this is about doing it in a way that's measurable so that we can repeat it and we can verify it and that sort of stuff. So I wouldn't even know where to begin in creating a protocol for that.
Absolutely. We always run group therapy just for that unique aspect of the borrowed benefits that occur in EFT. Okay. So, but not large groups, so, 8 to 10 people. And we have tested, we've run 2 chronic pain trials in the last 18 months, but without the fMRI aspect. So we have sort of tested out that it does work in a group. So what we will do typically is start from the symptom level, so, quite wide, which is fairly surface still, but give people a tool they can use at home. So we will start with, those descriptors of pain, where is it in the body, how would you describe it, blah, blah, blah. And then start to funnel down to, okay, so when was the first time you remember this? Is there an emotion in the pain? And in our groups, we'll often do that borrowed benefit aspect where one person will work with the facilitator in the group in front of everybody else, but everyone taps along. And then progressively over an 8 week period, all of them would have that opportunity. So you're right, Jean, Gotcha. It'll be movie technique, could be tell the story, that type of level, so that we are truly getting down to those deeper levels, peeling of the onion right to the core, that sort of thing. And it has worked. So we have published our chronic pain paper, the trial that we ran a year ago. That's out in print, so you can actually have a look at that to see what we did.
And so when you're doing something like this, I think you said something about this, that you're giving them tools to tap on their own. So when they're participating in this multi-week program, are you expecting them to tap on their own? Are you hoping they'll tap on their own? Are you just letting them make a choice and that just becomes one more data point as you're trying to decide whether or not this is useful or not?
We definitely ask them. So we do record that. So they'll record how often they do their tapping. We actually use SMS messages twice a week in between sessions to remind them, and they expect that, so they actually consent for that to happen. And that's just to keep them on track, so we know life happens. Right. So we ask them, we tend to get about 80%, so we record that, like you say, data point, that about 80% will do the homework in between. The others that perhaps just, come and do it in session once a week for a couple of hours, they still within the bigger group get the benefit anyway. What we do track is when the trial finishes, and we go back 6 months and 12 months later, we also say, have you kept tapping? So how often have you tapped? And that's where it really drops off. So, yes. Yeah. But what we find is at a, whatever we're measuring, psychological symptom level, is we're still getting the effect 12 months later that they're reporting, oh, my pain hasn't returned, or the severity of pain is, 2 out of 10 compared to 10 out of 10, even though they haven't continued to tap, which tells us that something is happening in that treatment period that at least is having some sort of neurological rewiring effect, because they've still got the benefit 12 months later. And that happens in the food area as well. So there is still a treatment benefit that persists over time.
And in the chronic pain groups and in the weight loss groups that you've done in the past, what's the comparative success between the folks who faithfully tap between the sessions and those who don't? Or do you not have a large enough sample size to be able to compare those two groups inside of the work that you're doing?
The difference between the two is not statistically significant enough to even notice that it's there.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's probably the best answer is if 80% are continuing to do it and 20 aren't, it doesn't have a big enough impact. And the 20% odd that, still obviously attend treatments and get the effect, still get the persistence of the treatment effect over time. So it actually, doesn't really do anything to them. We obviously encourage it because we're trying to give them a tool that they can return to at any point in their lives, not just for the symptom we're treating. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's more about a habit building empowerment exercise than it is about seeing how much more it's going to add to the results over the course of the 10 weeks.
Most definitely. Perfect answer, Jean.
Okay, excellent.
Yes.
So what other fun stuff do you guys have planned, or what are you hoping to do as you're moving forward?
Fun
or
stuff.
Is that enough?
This will keep me going. This will definitely keep me going for a couple of years.
Okay. So explain. So you've kind of laid out the things that you want to do. You now have access to this new technology. You're replicating some stuff you've done in the past. You're getting a chance to test new stuff. I am not an academic. I've never done any sort of research. Like, how long? I mean, I tap with a client. I know if it works or not. And I just take that little piece of anecdotal evidence and move on. To do comprehensive research and to create verifiable stuff that can be repeated, how long of a process is it for you and your students and your team?
I'm so glad you asked, because I don't think people fully understand the process, and people get a bit impatient with how frequently your publications come out. About 2 years for a trial. So from when we start recruitment to doing our initial, obviously we we'll have strict criteria about who can be included in a trial.
Right.
We have to refer those that aren't suitable to another kind of forum so that they don't, feel like they didn't get anything. Then we'll run our treatment, and we might so we always run group treatment for cost effectiveness, but we might, to get 120 people to go through a trial, say there's 10 groups of 12 people, they might be all staggered over 6 months. And then we have to do our follow-ups according to when they ended their treatment, and then we might have a control group as well. So then we'll have a 6-month follow-up, and then we'll have a 12-month follow-up, and that could be the 2-year point for us down the track, and then we'll obviously have the data to be able to analyse to then know, did this work, did it not work, how did it compare to the control, and then publish. So, so we now have a flow-on effect. So the things we're publishing right now might have finished sort of 6 to 8 months ago, and now we're publishing them, and now we've got that sort of roll-on effect. But in early days, it took 2 to 3 years to start that process. So it does, So sometimes I get a lot of feedback or comments, just from the general public in the EFT world that kind of say, oh, can you run a trial on this, or could you do this? And ultimately the answer is you don't know how much it takes to run a clinical trial. We really want the 12-month follow-up, because I think in this space that shows us that these kind of things, like the anecdotal evidence we see working with a client, they stick over time, and that's what we want to actually show. And now we compare them to gold standards like cognitive behavioural therapy or whatever. So we want to show the differences, that it's as effective, if not superior.
And I guess that's the difference between doing an experiment and doing a trial. I can go into my kitchen and I can experiment with some spaghetti sauce right now. And it's just a short-term thing. It's a completely different thing if I'm trying to create something that's long-term and all of that sort of stuff. So it's good that we see all of that kind of big picture. Thank you very much for your time. I always love these conversations.
Thanks so much for inviting me back again, Gene. It's been great.
So I hope you found that as interesting as I did. I love talking to someone who understands the science behind this stuff and can talk about it in such a clear, concise way so that as we're sharing EFT, we're able to say, yes, it is being tested and this is what we know. And after we finished the interview, Peta and I continued our conversation, and she has a couple other things up her sleeve. So we're going to have another conversation in February once that has solidified, so that all of the information that we're sharing with you is stuff that you can use with authority right away. If you would like more information on Peta, her amazing work, and links directly to a number of the studies that she has authored so you can show people real scientific proof that this stuff works, all you need to do is go to tappingqandapodcast.com, click on the link for episode 290, or if you happen to be listening to this in a smartphone of some sort, if you go into the show notes, all of the links are down below Peta's biography. Also, Peta's website is in there as well. So if you want to get in touch with her and connect with all of the amazing stuff that she's doing, she's the best. I always love getting an opportunity to chat with her. If you have a question, a comment, a topic you'd like to see us cover at some point in the future, please let me know. You can always reach me at Gene, Gene, at tappingqanda.com. You can click on the link up above if you're on the website where it says contact. And if you're one of those people who've downloaded the Tapping Q&A app, all you need to do is go into the app, click on contact. From inside the app, you can send me an email. You could even leave me a voicemail. I love hearing from you. Some of the best interviews that I have done recently have come from recommendations from listeners just like you. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Monterastelli. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Monterastelli, Tapping Q&A 2016. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Monterastelli or Tapping Q&A.